Well, yes, first off, I should warn you that Anya reports coming up in a moment. Anya Pop's report does contain some very distressing images, so please be aware of that. As you say, the police, PSNI, police here in Northern Ireland, say they've charged a man in his 30s. They've said very little, but we do know that this individual entered the UK was given leave to remain in the UK rather in 2028. He entered in 2023. It's believed this Sudanese man flew to Paris, then to Dublin and made his way north. But of course, at the centre of our attention tonight, it must be the victim, a man believed to be in his 30s. He, as you mentioned just now, is still in a serious condition in hospital here in Northern Ireland, suffering a series of stab wounds and slash wounds to his back, to his face and to his eyes. Clearly, it's been a fast-moving day of events here in Northern Ireland and repercussions elsewhere. I should mention one thing. This is a comment made by Colm Eastwood, a MP for Foyle, SDLP MP, former leader of the party, and he said, and I think this will ring quite a few people's with quite a few people tonight, resonate with them, when he said that politicians in England specifically have been commenting a lot about events here in Northern Ireland in the past 24 hours. They were very silent when areas, particularly areas like this in North Belfast, went through very difficult times during the Troubles here in Northern Ireland, and warned them really that they should keep their own counsel rather than saying some of the things that they've been saying on social media and elsewhere today. This report on the day's events then by Anya Pop.
10:30 last night on a residential street in northern Belfast. A man lies defenceless.
Has he got a knife? Yeah.
After coming under a sustained knife attack from the man on top of him, pinning him to the ground.
Yes! Get up! Get up!
Onlookers rushed to his rescue, using makeshift weapons including a wooden hurling stick to try and stop the attack. Within minutes, police arrive and take over. The victim, thought to be in his 40s, is in a serious condition with significant injuries to his eyes and slash wound injuries to his back and face. Mary, who wants to remain anonymous, watched the horror unfold.
He had a knife and he was stabbing the fella with the knife, and then he was putting his arms up and shouting something in his language, and he kept doing it, and then he kept trying to slice the fella, or he was slicing the fella's throat. I was petrified. I couldn't believe it, you know, like all you could do was stand back, you know. You couldn't have approached him. He was like a lunatic.
The fact the alleged attacker is Sudanese has reinvigorated divisive conversations about immigration, with officials forced to address the man's legal status today, confirming he was 3 years into a 5-year leave to remain visa, initially arriving in Dublin from France.
From my current understanding, he then travelled from Dublin to Belfast by bus on the 10th of February of 2023 and claimed asylum on that date. There is no trace of this suspect on any of our national security databases, and he was not known to the Police Service of Northern Ireland. I've been in direct contact with the head of the counter-terrorism policing in the UK. At this stage, we have no information to suggest that this was terrorist-related.
The DUP used the press conference to call for tighter restrictions on asylum seekers.
This was a man that went through a number of other safe countries before he came to Northern Ireland. We have been aware for some considerable time that there are people coming across the Irish border to claim asylum in Northern Ireland. Those people, very often, we do not know their background, we do not know the routes that they come through.
The First Minister, who belongs to Sinn Féin, told people not to jump to assumptions about the attacker.
People are feeling a bag of emotions about what they have witnessed over the course of yesterday evening and into this morning. But my message today is one of calm, and don't allow those people that don't care about people here to incite hatred, to incite fear. Don't allow those people who are faceless to orchestrate campaigns and on the streets.
That a nod perhaps to a post from the world's richest man, Elon Musk, who has once again waded into UK politics, encouraging people to protest against what the far-right figure known as Tommy Robinson called another invader attack on our people. Already there are musings online that this could become something much bigger, as it did last year in Ballymena, where an anti-immigration protest turned violent after 2 Romanian men were accused of raping a local teenager, charges that were later dropped.
The crowd should disperse immediately.
Tonight, loyalist groups have called for men willing to fight and be arrested to take to the streets of Northern Ireland dressed in black. In the wake of anti-immigration protests in Epping, Southport and most recently Southampton, there are real fears about the fallout from this, an incident thought to be standalone, and a hope that it remains just that.
Well, earlier I spoke to Brian Kingston, the MLA for Belfast North, and I began by asking him about calls across social media for public action.
We have seen from an early stage this morning people putting out anonymous posts on Facebook and other social media calling for road closures this evening from 7 o'clock. At a great number of roads across Northern Ireland. People have a right to protest, certainly, and people are alarmed at what occurred. But we have had trouble the last 2 years, 2025 and 2026, arising from race-related incidents. And there is the potential for there to be further trouble this evening, especially when, as I say, they're being called for anonymously. Nobody's taking responsibility. So I would appeal to anyone who is thinking of attending protests this evening to not let themselves be exploited by those who want to see trouble on the streets, who want to see violence. We don't want anyone else becoming a victim of what occurred last night.
And of course, Northern Ireland knows all about violence on the streets. You went through the troubles, for decades. That is now behind you. But are you worried that there's new trouble brewing on the streets of Northern Ireland around the issue of immigration, especially?
Well, immigration is a hot topic really across Europe, and across the UK. And people are rightly outraged when they see the boats crossing the English Channel and people claiming asylum. And when they've come from a safe country in France. The information we received this afternoon is that this individual, who's originally from Sudan, was in France, was in Paris.
Is there a danger here that this could get genuinely more inflamed than it is right now?
Well, the authorities are going to have to show a response to this. People who come here claiming asylum, there are tensions in local communities when people see houses turned into houses of multiple occupancy or flats or hotels being used to accommodate large numbers of asylum seekers. And we see that across the UK, and people ask questions, are these suitable people? So sadly, this incident has played into the worst fears that people have about people claiming asylum who are not peaceful. But it's important that people keep it in perspective that the vast majority of migrants who come to the UK are here working. The vast majority of migrants who come to Northern Ireland are working in our health services.
But that nuance is in danger of getting lost, isn't it? I mean, you've got the head of Restore UK, Rupert Lowe, saying murderous savages should be deported immediately, or should be put to death, actually, and then so many other people, millions of people, potentially deported. This is not the kind of language in which the nuance that you've called for is allowed to flourish.
Yes, well, that is a concern, but that should not be conflated with the majority of immigrants who are here working, as the majority are, and people need to keep that in perspective. So I do urge people, if they're attending protests, not to be exploited by those who want to see violence on our street and not to be in a situation where they're creating other people as victims.
Brian Kingston, thanks very much indeed.
Okay.
Well, joining me now live from the scene in Belfast is Matthew O'Toole, leader of the opposition of the Northern Ireland Assembly and an MLA for Belfast, and Alison Morris, a Belfast-based journalist with over 2 decades of experience reporting on crime, security and justice. Welcome to you both. Matthew, if I could start with you, please. I mean, I'm not sure if you heard my interview there with Brian Kingston. He said, on one hand, this situation should not be inflamed by outsiders, especially people like Elon Musk or people in English politics. On the other hand, he wants there to be tighter controls on immigration and asylum seekers. Has he got a fair point?
Well, look, the events last night, Matt, were grotesque and appalling, and people across the community in Belfast, across Northern Ireland, are totally shocked by them. But it is true to say that they've been leapt on by the hard right internationally, by Elon Musk and his fellow travellers online. So any concern people have about any issue, and people will, of course, be appalled by the scenes last night, and they want to know the status of this individual, and they want to know how this was allowed to happen. but we have to be honest and clear about what's happening here. The worst possible elements of hate are trying to exploit what's happened, a tragic, grotesque event in Belfast, an appalling attempted murder. We can't allow that to happen, and we need to be clear-eyed about it. And people have said rightly today that these are people like Elon Musk and English right-wing politicians who have no interest in this community. This is a place where people lost their lives in horrible ways in the 70s, 80s and 90s, and I didn't hear those people focusing on the needs of this community now. So I and others here are focused on this community, supporting it through this difficult time and ensuring that we protect communities here, including communities of colour.
Alison Morris, you've covered unrest and violence on the streets behind you for decades. And I just wonder whether you are afraid that there's a febrile moment here. I mean, this is a standalone event. It's horrific, but it's a standalone event. And how vulnerable is the situation to be exploited?
Well, you can probably hear the helicopter above our head. That's a sound I was very familiar with when I would have been covering riots here in the past, which would have been sectarian and related to our conflict. And now we have people being called out onto the streets in relation to this attack. And they're bad faith actors. There are people who use social media to bring very young men, mainly, onto the streets. They'll get criminal records. They'll be arrested as a result of this, while the people organising it stay at home or stay behind in the shadows. And we have, people who are in very bad faith, people like Elon Musk with millions of followers exploiting a very tragic situation. We do have a degree of knife crime in Northern Ireland. Belfast is a fairly safe place, but we do have knife crime. The difference is it mainly takes place behind closed doors, whereas this was very public. It was filmed, and I think that footage is what has been used by the far right to try and exploit this and bring young people out onto the streets. But it was a barbaric attack, and questions do need to be asked about safeguarding and could this have been prevented.
Matthew O'Toole, I mean, we saw the footage in Anya Pop's report of the violence in Ballymena last year. That was about immigration as well. Are you worried that if there is going to be more unrest on the streets of places like Belfast and elsewhere, it'll be along those issues of immigration, asylum seekers and identity politics, which you are familiar with from the past, but a new incarnation of it?
I didn't hear all of that, Matt, because of the helicopter overhead, for obvious reasons. But I think you were asking me about immigration and the questions of immigration, including on the island of Ireland. I think it's important to say that people to say that immigration isn't allowed to be talked about. People are talking about immigration, particularly on the right, all the time. There's no prohibition on people talking about it, but it is also true to say that on this island we have communities who are enriching the island of Ireland, and they deserve to be protected. Earlier on the way here to do this interview to what is now a crime scene, Belfast was a ghost town. It was called up the worst days of the Troubles in the 80s and 90s here, when people were afraid to go out onto the streets. Like, these people who say they want to protect communities are they're scaring people by calling people out onto the streets and turning our city into a ghost town tonight. So I would say to people who claim they want to protect communities to think about what the fear they're inflicting on communities in this city tonight.
And Alison, does that fear, that attempt to inflict fear, work on a place that has overcome fear? I mean, you've gone on a hell of a journey in Northern Ireland. It's been a positive one on the whole. I think most people would agree. Again, does that kind of fear, that stoking of fear, work on people like you?
Last night I was at a conference about policing, and I left at about an hour before this attack happened. And at that conference, the Chief Constable there was talking about confidence in policing. And a lot of this is to do with building confidence in policing in a post-conflict society, which is what we are. And clearly, since the Troubles, it's changed. We've had a lot of influx of migration here, the majority of it very positive. But it means policing changes, and public confidence in policing has changed. And that is why it was very, very important that the police came out today and did what they did. They gave all the information they had to hand to the public, because in the absence of that information, you do get people online, people from the far right, people who want to use tragedies like this to boost their own support, putting misinformation, disinformation into the public domain. So I do think that this is an important time for policing and for Northern Ireland as a whole. But a lot of these are just the normal changes, the normal crime that would take place in other places. And we have seen this. There's knife crime being in this very street behind me. Just a few years ago, I reported on But I think that we do need to have very serious conversations about what policing and justice will look like in Northern Ireland in a new post-conflict society.
And just in one line, your message to Elon Musk is what? Back off?
Well, Elon Musk has just completely ruined Twitter for everyone. And I think that an example of that, when I woke up this morning and seen Elon Musk was tweeting about Northern Ireland, I don't think there's any situation can not be made worse by the arrival of Elon Musk on the scene.
Matthew O'Toole, very, very briefly to you.
Yeah.
Tommy Robinson, of all people,
Elon
has called for loyalists and unionists to unite today. This is Tommy Robinson of the far right. Are you going to heed his call?
I would say to Tommy Robinson, go away, get out, get your nose out of Northern Ireland. You are not wanted here. People in this community are appalled by what happened last night, but they do not want the intervention from, frankly, thugs and knuckle-draggers who have no interest in this society. This is a society which has emerged from conflict and tragedy and violence. We know what it means to come together and to stand against violence, and we aren't going to let bad actors like Robinson, Elon Musk and others drag us down a dark road.
Matthew O'Toole, Alison Morris on the streets of Belfast, thank you very much indeed for joining me.